nine, yeah, 901. Uh, Future is bouncing, and this was the futures coming down. This was from yesterday. This was an okay trade. Perhaps this was a given trade, right? Yesterday we were predicting markets to come down based on the 1 hour chart. We wanted to see market come down probably into 3980 area, and pretty much that's where the market got. If if anybody were trading SPX, or if anybody were trading the ES. So this is somewhere around like right about here. Let's say it bounced about 4010, right? So 15 points off of 4010 would be 3985 area, 3995, I suppose. Yeah. So that area, yesterday we were kind of predicting SPX to come back down and probably bounce off of that number. And let's open up SPX here. Basically, this is the line, right? Let's try and open SPX. Hopefully today, because of FOMC tomorrow, I'm not really expecting a whole lot of moves unless Apple does something crazy. And this is the move that we were expecting for it to come back down. This is SPX from yesterday, right? We were expecting it to breach here and then come back down, probably right about here in the second standard deviation and bounce. And in extreme case, this is exactly what we discussed, right? And in extreme case, it's going to come back down and bounce. In any case, we were looking for a bounce based on the 1 hour chart. Why? Simply because this thing was oversold right here, and the this thing average on the RSI is also getting oversold. The overnight session should have pushed it down. It was either supposed to bounce here 4012, or about right about here the third standard deviation on the 1 hour. In extreme case, we are still expecting, if it does come down, 3982 is where it will bounce. Not plotting anything below this today. And to the upside, where are we? 4044, so 4030, right about, where's 4030? Right about here. So it should be stuck somewhere about here, right? The five on the hourly chart. This is where it will open about 4030. Then very likely we're going to see it push all the way up into the 8, and the mean is sitting all the way up here at 4049, 4050. So to the upside, I think it's going to, and this is SPX, we're talking SPX. If it starts to move, it's going to hit that 4050 and we'll reassess the situation. I think it's going to open somewhere about here at 4030 area, and then probably push all the way here to the 21. That clears. The mean is at 4050. Let's round that up at 4050. If it does clear that 4050 to the upside, then we'll reassess the situation, probably into 4057 to 4062. Not really plotting anything beyond this 4062 at the moment. But if it does clear that range there, then we'll reassess to the upside. But I will take a call after it clears 4050. Basically, the mean on the hour to the upside. And to the downside, again, if the second standard deviation breaches, that's about 3995 area. If that breaches, then very likely we're going to see another bounce around 3982 area. As of now, plotting nothing below 3980, and even I think that even for it to come back down to 3980, I think it will be a struggle. So let's say if it's opening here at 4030, 4030 area. So to the downside, we'll watch 4022, just like yesterday. Just like yesterday, it was struggling with that 4030 number to the upside, and it did come back down into 4022, then 4018, then it tried to stop around here at the 50 on the hour, and this will be the exact range that I'll be watching to the downside, the step by step, 4022, then come back down into 4016, and come back into 4012. Then if that reaches, we're expecting 3995. So that's the exact path, and I'm not looking for. I will not be plotting anything, serious downside unless I see it breach. Unless I see Apple start to push to the downside, reaching its 5 and starting to get to its 8. Unless that happens, I will not be plotting anything below this number, the black line, the 50 moving average on the hour for SPX. Now let's get into ES. So right about here, this should act as pretty decent resistance. If that clears, we are looking for a hit of this number 4052. That clears 4054. That clears 4061. And unless, first thing it needs to clear here, obviously 4046. That means the SPX need to clear above 4030. And after that, this is another resistance point, 4052. After that, we still have to deal with this 4054 area, 4054, 4055. That would translate to about 4040 on SPX, right? And unless this thing clears this number, the 100 moving, the 50 moving average to the upside on the hourly chart, we will reassess the situation after this. If not, we will not really look forward for any meaningful upside. And it makes sense if the market just stays within this upside 4055 for ES, downside this 200 moving average, upside 50 moving average. It would make a lot of sense if the market just moves within these two major moving averages on the 1 hour time frame, and because of FMC tomorrow. So that makes a lot of sense. And if you're trading, options, um I would recommend trade spreads for now, or even if you have a naked option, then have a hedge. That is much more sensible at the moment. And if you're going 2 weeks out, then make sure that you're picking, you're staying somewhere close to the money, maybe 1.5%. Why? In fact, I would not trade. I would not trade beyond, unless I see a sizable move. I would trade very light today. Why? Because the option premiums will get crushed. As soon as the event is done tomorrow, the options premium will be crushed. And the because the IV is so high today that on those options, even the 2 weeks out, again because of FOMC, then earnings will continue, Apple, Amazon, and all that. So the IV is still high, and as and when that event is getting closer, the IV will move. But if because of that IV is super high, and even a move, little bit of move, maybe let's say 0.25% to even 0.5%, then the crush will start to happen, right? So keep that in mind. So be very careful with the option that you're choosing. Maybe it's a good day to deal with zero DTEs instead of going 2 weeks out, and keep your position size relatively small unless we see a clear move to the upside or to the downside. And this is what I was watching actually, US 10. Right, as soon as the data hit, this thing right about here started to move to the downside. As soon as the data hit, actually it moved up, and then started to do this, right? And this is where the market started to push higher. And I think it needs to come. Probably, I'm of the thinking that it still needs to come down. Why? Because we are still tracking this chart here. I still think that it needs to come down. I still think that we are gonna get this backday crossover on the month. Then I think it will start to push down. Makes sense. Even if it doesn't push down all the way into, let's say, 2.84, actually it makes sense for it to come down to 2.84. But if even if it doesn't come down all the way here, we'll still be tracking this 3.41, right? And it might not happen today, but if it does happen, there are two reasons that could happen. First, the economic data that hit, that is good, and based on that, it might come down into 3.42. And the other reason that it might come down is actually tomorrow the Fed might actually go with 20. There is a possibility that, somebody posted that chart, 1.1% of no hikes, right? So if no hikes happen, or if 25 bips happen, this thing will come down. And if 50 bips, if Fed goes 50 bips, probably it's going to go up beyond the 5 here on the month. It will probably start to, a pretty decent. I think there will be a pretty decent move to the upside if Fed goes zero point 0.5 bips. If Fed goes 25 bips, then very likely it's going to come down, and probably it will start to sustain below. And very likely we're going to get a crossover here on the MACD on the month. That's the idea there, and keep a close watch on this chart as well. And we've been tracking this chart for to probably mark the market lows, and we've been tracking this chart clearly into this number till here, the 21. It hasn't breached that, and I was very hopeful of that. It will breach to the downside. Probably tomorrow would be the day. Tomorrow would be the day, unless Fed goes 50 bips. I'm thinking that it will start to come back down. US 10, if the Fed goes 25 bips, I think US 10 will start to push to the downside. Very likely that 3.28 number, and then I think DXY will start to follow that US 10 and start to breach below its 21, and very likely come back down here into 100, 100.40. That's where the mean is sitting. That breaches very likely 99.5, and after that, very likely it's going to come back down into 9. I think by the year end, I think this is the area that I'm expecting dollar to be around. And as long as we see dollar to the downside, and as long as dollar remains tamed, I think there is a pretty decent chance of actually market. I don't want to say new highs, but market will not see new lows at least. It's not time yet for to make a new highs call. Well, I could make a new highs call, but not really. It's not gonna be at the moment unless I see dollar crashing down. That would not be appropriate. But I think dollar will keep the downward pressure on the dollar will remain, and I think dollar will remain to the downside unless Fed does something which might shock the 10-year and dollar pushes up. Unless that happens, I think dollar will be tamed. Let's go here on the week. Here, this chart is screaming for a bounce, right? And the bounce might come tomorrow or even today in anticipation of that move from the Fed. And if the DXY pushes beyond this 5 right here, it's hitting that number, and it is coming back down from there. But if DXY comes back up, and 102.50, 102.60 here, then I'll probably look at a DXY as 102.90 to 103.30. And if DXY takes this path to the upside, then obviously we'll have some weakness in the risk assets, including crypto, right? So that's what we're watching with respect to DXY. 10-year move lower after that data, and the DXY should be doing the same actually. Uh, if we go down here on this chart, we'll be able to see what DXY is doing. Okay, so this is what DXY is doing. As long as DXY remains in this posture, which is downward momentum, then I think risk assets will kind of be okay here. Uh, let's go here. Apple. So this is the guy, and yesterday we were expecting it to hit this number, and actually Apple came back down after market, after hours, even in the pre-market, and it breached below there. Probably I think the lows were about 142.10 or something like that. I was expecting it to come back down and hit this number 141.80, uh, then bounce. Obviously it did not happen. I think it bounced around 142. I don't know where it bounced. Let's go check where it bounced. Right about 142.17, 142, around 142. Right? I think, yeah, Apple bounced around 142. Again, here's the thing with Apple. This is the hourly chart with Apple. And Apple, this is the MFI for Apple, the same thing. It works in cycles. Overbought, oversold. And next would be overbought. And next would be oversold. But this move, I think the easier move up to the 50, I think that happened pre-market. So now, unless Apple moves beyond this 50 moving average and actually hits this 143.70, I think it should hit that 143.70, and then I think it should trace back all the way to the mean before making a stop right here at the half trend 144, and then the mean probably 144.30. Then after that 144.40. So I think there is still room to the upside going by what is happening here. The SMI cross to the upside. The only thing that is a bit of a concern is this thing. It hasn't really crossed, but on the lower time frame, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to watch what is this MACD, right? And yeah, if Apple takes this path to the upside, then there's no reason for us to look to the downside on SPX. Also, take a look at this guy, Microsoft. Come on, right? So same situation here, right? The same situation right here. It's trying to cross to the upside. So if Apple and Microsoft does the same exact thing, which they are doing right now, and start to move to the mean, and I'm expecting, and look at the similarity between the charts. Almost same thing. 50 moving average trying to cross to the upside. I'm pretty sure that I shouldn't be saying pretty sure, but I think Apple will follow the same path and hit this 21 on the hour, take a breather, then after that hit the super trend, take another breather, then hit the mean. That's the idea here. And after, at any point, if it starts to push to the downside, even let's say if it goes all the way down here into 241, and still these technicals will still be oversold here, right? So to the downside, very likely, I think 241 area is what we're watching, and to the upside, we should be watching the mean on the hour 245. Unless Microsoft clears either 245 to the upside or to the downside, here the 100 moving average 241. I think the market will be range bound. Same thing with Apple. Same exact thing with Apple. To the upside, it's doing the same exact thing. 50 that clears the 21, that clears the half trend. Very likely the mean is the next target 144.25. And Apple and Microsoft move in tandem to the upside. The market will go upside, and either here or here, if Apple and Microsoft start to take a breather to the downside, start to come back down into 142, then obviously the market will push to the downside. In any case, I'm thinking that 1% move is within today. I think 1% move is enough, would be enough, given what Apple is doing, given what Microsoft is doing. I think 1% move is will be good enough for the day today. Let's get into a little bit of Tesla here. Right. Yesterday, this is what we were watching for Tesla, the 200 moving average. Today, it is still holding. I think it broke actually. Whoa. Yeah, it did broke. It did break. And let's go here with Tesla. Should have held my short. Anyway, so I think that if it doesn't bounce here, then very likely same story. It's going to come back into five around 160. Very likely we'll look for another bounce around 160. Then if it reaches the 160 area, and it's going to come back down here into 155. Actually, I'm not really looking forward for this 155, 156 to get tested today. I am, in fact, I'm not even looking forward to this 160 to get tested today. But just might be, it might be a wick that comes back down and tests this and bounces. So yeah, I'll keep a close watch on this. And again, I will not be putting on any major trades because my trading style is I'll go 2 weeks out to put major trades, right? And 2 weeks out, the premiums are still super expensive, if you will, and it doesn't make sense for me to actually buy those if I am going in with a bit of volume, right? So that trade is I'm going to be very light on those trades unless tomorrow, of course, we'll do the same thing. We'll play the same FOMC playbook. First trade would be the IV trade. We buy it about half an hour before and exit that trade closer to the FOMC. Then we'll use those profits to manage the trade. So that's tomorrow's trade. But for now, this is how it looks like, and the 1 hour chart for Tesla. All right. So this is where the problem is, right? So now to the downside, it is still wanting to come back down because this chart wants it to come back down. And it broke a major moving average here. And to the upside, if it starts to run to the upside, then very likely this will act as resistance now. 168 area will act as resistance for Tesla. Unless Apple pushes through above its hourly mean, then the Tesla will not be able to clear this number here, 160, 168 area. And to the upside here, either we could look for a bounce right about here, 160, or right about here where it is trying to bounce, or right about here, 162, 162.20, or probably 161. If it comes back down here or here, I think it should come. If it does, not I think, but if it does come back down into 161 area, I will be looking forward for a bounce. That means it will be thoroughly oversold here. It is even now. It is thoroughly oversold. Even now, it is trying to cross to the upside on the SMI. Very likely, it'll bounce the five, the eight, even probably till the 21. Don't know, but educated guess. The pattern that we have repeatedly traded this one. MFI gets oversold, it starts to bounce, and it is crossing. We just want to make sure that it's hitting one major moving average either on the lower time frame. It's not hitting anything on the higher time frame, so maybe on the lower time frame, either we could go down here on the 15-minute and check if it's hitting any major moving average. Nope, it's not. So perhaps we want to see, if it clears the five, then we'll put on a trade for the eight, and if it clears the eight, then we're going to put on a trade for the 21. And to the downside, very likely, if it starts to push to the downside, and if Apple doesn't move to the downside, then this is not going to move to the downside. Why? Because it is oversold here. The algorithms, we are not the only ones who know this data. Pretty much all the algorithms figure this out. Pretty much majority of the professionals know this stuff, right? So they're going to be looking at the same data, looking for a bounce right about here or here. And if that breaches, very likely a bounce right about here. So 160 area is pretty crucial to the downside, and about 168 to the upside. That's for Tesla. Microsoft, I think, is the same boat as Apple. So it ran too hard, too fast, and to the downside. Now, if it breaches the 8, then we're looking forward for a push down into 242 and a bounce here. This is a good bounce spot. And if it does breach there, then I think 240 shouldn't be planning 240 until this thing clears 241.90 area. Unless this thing starts to breach to the downside, I shouldn't be plotting 240. But if it does clear there and the Apple starts to move to the downside, then we'll see 240, but nothing below 240 for Microsoft. It doesn't make sense today for Microsoft to actually breach the 50, but if it does somehow breach it, then it doesn't make sense for it to absolutely doesn't make sense for it to breach this the 200 moving average or even the 50 EMA here. Where is that? Yeah, this has to hold for Microsoft. This, the 5 and the 8, this has to hold here. I don't believe Microsoft, and if, I'd be surprised if actually Microsoft breaches this and starts to move down here into 240, 239. I don't believe that. I don't see that happening. But unless this 1 hour chart does something different, other than what we are predicting it to do, it doesn't make sense, right? So, yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Cool. Uh, Anything else we are watching in particular? Darth and should we trade equity in strong? Yeah, I would. I would. In fact, if at all, I would trade very light today. Options make sense only if you have more than more than percentage, or in quick session decision, if you have 0.25% to 0.5%, that makes your option move. That's when you make money on the option side of things, especially if it stalls to stall. If the market, just like what happened yesterday at around 1 o'clock, the market started to stall around 4:30, 4:31, 40:30, 40:31. It didn't come down or didn't go up, right? That's when the options start to die quicker. So I'll be very careful today. And majority of the market participants, I'm expecting it to be them to be careful today, given FOMC tomorrow. All right. Do we have anything in particular that we want to check? All right, cool. Let's move into live trading.